In the small, dusty town of Willow Creek, where the mountains kissed the horizon and the scent of earth was always in the air, Emma Miller had always been seen as strong. She worked hard on the farm she inherited from her parents, who had passed away when she was still young. Emma had never been one to show weakness. Her face, often covered with dirt from a long day's work, held a quiet sadness that no one could quite place. Emma had been raised on the farm with the promise that she would always take care of it. Her parents had loved the land, and it had been passed down from generation to generation. They had taught her the ways of farming, how to care for animals, and how to keep the land healthy. They had believed in the strength of hard work, and Emma had carried that belief with her into adulthood. But there was one thing they had never prepared her for: the pain of losing someone she loved. Emma had fallen in love with Marcus Blackwood when they were both teenagers. He was the son of a wealthy rancher from a neighboring farm, and their love had blossomed during summer nights filled with laughter, dreams of the future, and stolen kisses in the fields. They had been inseparable. Everyone in town knew they were meant to be together, and they thought their love would last forever. But life had a way of changing everything. One evening, just after Emma's 19th birthday, Marcus had told her he needed to leave Willow Creek for a while. At first, she thought it was just a short trip, but as the days passed into weeks and then into months, Emma realized Marcus wasn't coming back. There were no letters, no phone calls, and certainly no visits. It was as if he had disappeared without a trace. Emma never knew the real reason why Marcus left. He had promised her they would always be together, yet when she needed him the most, he had walked away without an explanation. It hurt more than anything she could have imagined. Her heart broke with every passing day. She had tried to forget about him, to move on with her life. But every corner of Willow Creek reminded her of him, the fields where they had walked hand in hand, the old oak tree they had carved their initials into, the barn where they had shared their first kiss. Every memory felt like a dagger in her heart. Years had passed since Marcus left, and Emma had grown stronger in his absence. She had taken over the farm entirely, managing the crops, caring for the animals, and doing everything her parents had taught her. It was a hard life, but she had learned to live with it. She had learned to bury her feelings deep inside and never let anyone see the scars left by Marcus's disappearance. The town had moved on as well. People talked less about the young couple who had once been inseparable, but there were still moments late at night when Emma would sit by the fire and think about Marcus. What had happened to him? Why had he left without a word? The questions haunted her, but she had learned to live with the unanswered ones. One day, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Emma was in the barn, cleaning up after the cows, when she heard the sound of a horse approaching. The soft thud of hooves on the dirt road echoed through the quiet evening. Emma paused, listening. She wasn't expecting anyone. The sound grew louder, and soon a shadow appeared in the doorway of the barn. When Emma looked up, her breath caught in her throat. Standing in the doorway was a figure she hadn't seen in years. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his face was weathered by time and hardship. It was Marcus. Emma's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. "Emma," he said, his voice hoarse as if it hadn't been used in a long time. It's been a long time. She couldn't speak at first. She just stared at him, her mind racing. Was it really him? Was he really standing there in front of her after all these years? He looked different. Older, perhaps, but there was no mistaking the deep blue of his eyes, or the way his presence made the room feel smaller, as if it was just the two of them again, like it had been so many years ago. "What are you doing here?" Emma finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't hide the pain in her words. "Why did you leave me, Marcus? Why did you leave without telling me anything?" Marcus took a step forward, and for a brief moment, Emma thought he might reach out to touch her. But he stopped himself, his hands clenched at his sides. He looked down at the ground, unable to meet her gaze. "I never meant to hurt you, Emma," he said softly. I had to leave. There were things I couldn't tell you, things I couldn't explain. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought it would be easier for you if I just went away, but now I see that I was wrong." Emma felt a surge of anger. She wanted to scream, to demand answers. Why had he done this to her? Why had he left without a word, without even a single explanation? But she held her tongue. The years of bitterness and hurt had built walls around her heart, walls she didn't know how to tear down. "Why now?" she asked, her voice cold. "Why come back after all these years? After everything that's happened?" Do you think it's that easy to just walk back into my life like nothing has changed? Marcus took a deep breath and slowly approached her. I know I can't change the past, Emma, he said, his voice full of regret. But I need you to know that I never stopped thinking about you, never. I didn't know how to fix what I had broken. Emma didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to believe him, wanted to let the past go and move forward. But another part of her was afraid of getting hurt again, of opening up her heart to someone who had left her without a second thought. The years of pain and unanswered questions were not something she could easily forget. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy and filled with unspoken words. Finally, Marcus spoke again. Please, Emma, he said, his voice pleading. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to make things right. I want to try if you'll let me. Emma looked at him, her heart torn between the love she once felt for him and the hurt that still lingered. She wasn't sure what to do. All she knew was that the past had a way of staying with you, no matter how far you tried to run from it. And as the sun set behind the mountains, Emma realized that the hardest part of all wasn't the past. It was deciding whether she could let Marcus back into her life, or if it was already too late. The morning after Marcus's unexpected return was filled with a sense of heaviness that Emma couldn't shake off. She had barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts of him. The sound of his voice still echoed in her ears, the memory of his sudden appearance haunting her. She couldn't understand why he had come back after all these years, why he had left without a word in the first place, and why now, of all times, he decided to show up again. The day began like any other. Emma went about her routine, feeding the animals and working the land. But everything felt different. The soft bleating of the sheep and the low moo of the cows seemed to echo louder in her mind. The sun beat down on her back, but she couldn't escape the weight of the moment. She knew she couldn't keep avoiding the truth. Marcus was back in town, and she had to figure out what to do with the feelings that had been buried for so long. As the day wore on, the town of Willow Creek slowly began to wake up. The streets were lined with small shops, each with wooden signs hanging in front of the doors. The sound of children playing in the distance mixed with the quiet murmur of neighbors gossiping over the fence. The town was small. Everyone knew everyone, and everyone knew about Marcus's sudden return. By noon, the local saloon was filled with the usual crowd. The smell of fried chicken and baked goods filled the air, and the sound of glasses clinking together created a comfortable hum. As Emma stepped through the door, she could feel the eyes of the town on her. The murmurs and whispers stopped for a moment as people turned to look at her. They had all heard about Marcus's return, and they were eager to see how she would react. Emma's eyes scanned the room, looking for him. It didn't take long before she spotted Marcus sitting alone at a corner table, his back to the window. His tall frame was hunched slightly, his hands wrapped around a glass of whiskey, his eyes staring out into the distance. The years had been kind to him in some ways, but the weight of time had marked his face with the faintest lines, a reminder of the struggles he had faced while she had lived her life without him. Without thinking, Emma walked over to the table and sat down across from him. Marcus looked up, his eyes locking with hers for the first time in years. A mixture of emotions passed through his gaze, surprise, regret, longing. But Emma didn't know how to feel. She wanted to shout at him, to demand answers, but the words stuck in her throat. "Hello, Emma," Marcus said quietly, breaking the silence. His voice was still familiar, but there was a sadness to it, a weariness that spoke of the burden he had carried all these years. "I didn't expect to see you here." Emma crossed her arms over her chest, her heart racing. She couldn't help but notice how much older he looked now, how much more distant he seemed. Yet there was still something in the way he held himself, the way his eyes softened when they met hers, that reminded her of the young man she had once loved. "You should have expected it, Marcus," Emma said, her voice trembling slightly, though she tried to keep her composure. "You've been gone for years. You think I would just forget about you? You think I would just let you walk back into my life like nothing happened?" Marcus's face tightened and he leaned forward as if the weight of her words was too much for him to bear. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "But I've been carrying the guilt of leaving you all this time. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you by leaving, but now I see how wrong I was." Emma shook her head, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. "You didn't protect me, Marcus. You just left. You left without a word. No explanation. No nothing. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor, the sound sharp in the silence that had settled between them. Marcus didn't try to stop her. He just sat there watching her as she paced back and forth in front of him. Do you know what it's been like? She continued, her voice rising with emotion. Do you know what it's been like all these years, wondering what happened to you? Wondering why you left me. I never got an answer, Marcus. Not a single word. And now you're sitting here, telling me you were protecting me? She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. You hurt me more than you know. You broke me, Marcus. And now you think you can just walk back into my life and fix everything. Marcus looked at her with pained eyes. No, Emma, I don't think I can fix everything, he said softly. But I want to try. I want to make things right. I know I can't change the past, but maybe we can find a way forward. Together. Emma stood there frozen, the words hanging in the air between them. Her heart was torn. Part of her wanted to believe him, wanted to take his hand and forgive him for the years of pain he had caused her. But another part of her was scared. Scared that if she let him back into her life, she would only end up hurt again. I don't know if I can do that, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't know if I can forgive you. Marcus's face fell, and for a moment Emma saw the young man she had once loved. The boy who had promised her forever, but that boy was gone, replaced by a man who had made choices that neither of them could undo. I understand, he said quietly. I never expected it to be easy, but I had to try. I had to come back and tell you the truth, even if it doesn't change anything. Emma's mind raced. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her chest. Was she ready to open her heart to Marcus again? Could she trust him after everything he had done? As she looked at him, the man who had once meant everything to her, she realized that there were no easy answers. The years that had passed couldn't be erased, and the hurt couldn't simply be forgotten. But maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for healing. Maybe there was still something left worth saving. I need time, she said finally, her voice soft but firm. I need time to think. Marcus nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. I'll give you all the time you need, Emma, but please know this. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here and I'm not leaving until we figure this out. Emma turned to leave, but as she reached the door, she glanced back at him one last time. His eyes followed her, full of hope, full of regret. And as she stepped out into the bright sunlight of Willow Creek, she knew that things were about to change, whether she was ready or not. The next few days felt like a whirlwind to Emma. Marcus's sudden return had thrown everything she had carefully built over the years into a state of confusion. She went about her usual tasks, feeding the animals, tending to the crops, and repairing the broken fences. But it felt as if the world around her was moving too fast. She could still hear his voice in her head, feel the weight of his gaze, and see the pain in his eyes. She hadn't been able to stop thinking about him for a single moment since their encounter at the saloon. But no matter how much she tried to bury it, the question lingered. Why had Marcus come back after all these years? What had happened in the time they had been apart? What was he trying to fix now, and could it ever be enough? Emma wasn't sure she was ready to face him again. It had taken years for her to heal, years of painful memories and unanswered questions. She had built walls around herself, and she wasn't sure if she could tear them down now. She didn't know if she could ever trust Marcus again, not after everything that had happened. And yet there was something about him, something that made her want to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. On the fourth day after their conversation at the saloon, Emma couldn't avoid him any longer. She had been avoiding the town square, the post office, and even the general store, hoping to avoid another awkward meeting. But as she was walking back to the barn one afternoon, she saw him standing by the gate to her property, his silhouette framed by the fading light of the setting sun. He wasn't looking at her yet, but he knew she had seen him. He had that same familiar way of sensing when she was nearby, the way he used to when they were young, the way he always knew where she was, even without looking. Marcus didn't move at first. He just stood there, waiting, as if he were giving her the space to make a choice. Emma hesitated for a moment, the familiar ache in her chest returning. She didn't know what to do, but she knew that she couldn't keep running from the truth. With a deep breath, Emma walked toward him, her boots crunching on the dry earth beneath her feet. As she got closer, Marcus turned to face her, his expression unreadable. There was a nervousness in his posture, but also something else, determination. I've been waiting for you to come to me. Marcus said quietly as she stopped in front of him. Emma folded her arms across her chest, trying to keep her emotions in check. I don't know what to say to you, she replied, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. I've spent so many years trying to forget you, Marcus, trying to move on, and now you're back and I'm just supposed to pretend like everything is fine. Marcus looked at her with pain in his eyes, but there was no anger in his gaze, only regret. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't expect you to forget what I did, but I owe you the truth, Emma. I should have told you everything all those years ago. You deserve that much. Emma felt her heart race at his words. She had always known that Marcus had kept something from her, but she had never been able to figure out exactly what it was. It had always been a mystery that haunted her, a question that refused to be answered. What truth? She asked, her voice quiet. She wasn't sure if she wanted to hear the answer, but she knew she couldn't keep living with the unknown. Marcus hesitated for a moment before speaking again. I left because my family needed me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. My father was sick and I knew that I would have to take over the ranch. I didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice. The family business came first. But it wasn't just that. There was someone else I was responsible for, someone who needed me, and I couldn't tell you that, because I didn't want you to be a part of it. Emma's mind spun as she tried to process what he was saying. She had always thought that Marcus's departure had been about him wanting to leave Willow Creek, about wanting to start fresh. But now it seemed there was more to it than she had ever known. So you left me, for your family? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. She could feel the old hurt rising within her again, threatening to break through. No, Marcus said quickly, his face a mask of regret. I didn't leave you for them. I left because I thought it was the best thing to do. I thought you'd be better off without me. The life I was leading, the responsibilities I had, I didn't want that to affect you. I didn't want to drag you into a life of uncertainty, of obligations that could tear us apart. I thought you'd be better off without me. Emma's heart twisted as she listened to him. Part of her understood what he was saying, but another part of her was angry. Angry that he had made that decision for her. Angry that he had thought leaving without a word was the right thing to do. You didn't think I deserved to know, did you? She said, her voice barely above a whisper. You didn't think I deserved a choice in the matter. You just made it for me. Marcus looked down at the ground, guilt written all over his face. I was wrong, Emma. I see that now. I should have told you everything. I should have fought for you, for us. But I didn't. And that's something I will have to live with for the rest of my life. Emma looked at him for a long moment, the weight of his words settling in her chest. She didn't know what to say. Her heart was a tangled mess of old feelings, new hurt, and the desire for answers. She had spent so many years believing that Marcus had simply walked away from her without any thought or care. Now, hearing his side of the story, it was clear that he had never wanted to leave her. He had made a choice out of duty, out of love for his family, even if that choice had hurt her. I don't know what to do with this, Marcus, Emma said finally, her voice soft. I don't know if I can just pick up where we left off. So much time has passed and so much has changed. Marcus nodded, his expression sad but understanding. I don't expect things to go back to how they were, Emma. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want you to know that I'm here now. I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere this time. The silence between them stretched for a long moment. Emma could feel the weight of the decision before her. The decision to either let Marcus back into her life or to keep him at a distance, where he couldn't hurt her again. I can't promise anything, she said softly, looking at him with a mixture of uncertainty and hope. But maybe we can start by being friends, and see where it goes from there. Marcus's eyes softened, and for the first time since their conversation began, a small, hopeful smile tugged at his lips. I can live with that, Emma. I just want the chance to make things right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the land, Emma felt the first stirrings of something inside her, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe there was hope after all. Maybe they could rebuild one step at a time. The days following their conversation were filled with tension. Emma found herself torn between her heart and her head, unsure of how to proceed. It had been so long since she had allowed anyone to get close, especially Marcus. The walls she had built around herself to protect her heart were strong, but Marcus's words had begun to chip away at them. She couldn't ignore the pull she still felt toward him, the flicker of something familiar in the way he looked at her, in the way he spoke. Yet the past was not so easily forgotten. Every time she saw him, she was reminded of the pain, the years of silence, and the questions that had gone unanswered. She had spent so much time pretending to be okay, convincing herself that she was fine on her own. She had learned to be independent, to rely on no one but herself. And now Marcus was back, asking her to open up again, to trust him again. Could she do that? The town had noticed the change too. The whispers had started again, the old gossip that had once filled the streets of Willow Creek. People talked about Marcus's return, about his quiet presence in the town, and about Emma's reaction to seeing him again. Some believed it was only a matter of time before they were back together, while others thought Emma might never forgive him for leaving. But no one knew the truth, not really. No one knew the pain Emma had carried in her heart all these years. On the 5th evening after their conversation by the gate, Marcus showed up at Emma's door again. This time it wasn't a surprise. She had been expecting him, though she had no idea what to say to him. The quiet knocking on her door echoed through the house, sending a jolt of nervous energy through her body. She had spent the day working on the farm, trying to keep busy, but her thoughts kept drifting back to him. Emma opened the door, her heart beating faster than usual. Marcus stood there looking the same as always, strong, steady, but with a hint of vulnerability in his eyes that made Emma's chest tighten. He had come without his usual confidence, without the easy charm that had once won her over. There was a quiet desperation in his gaze now, as if he was afraid he might lose her for good if he didn't do something. "Say something, Emma," Marcus said softly, his voice carrying the weight of something unspoken. "I know things are complicated, but I need to talk to you. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how you feel, and I can't keep pretending like I don't care. I need to know where we stand." Emma stepped aside, allowing him into the house. She had heard the words before. She knew he cared, that much was clear. But what did that mean now? After all these years, after all the hurt, could she ever truly trust him again? Could she forgive him for leaving her without an explanation, for choosing duty over their love? They sat down in the living room, the fire crackling softly in the background. The warm light flickered on the walls, but the air between them felt cold, heavy with the weight of their history. Emma looked at him, her mind racing. She couldn't keep avoiding the truth any longer. She couldn't pretend that things hadn't changed, that she hadn't changed. But could she open her heart again? Could she let Marcus back into her life? "I don't know what to say, Marcus," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent so many years trying to forget about you, trying to move on, but now you're here, asking me to trust you again. And I don't know if I can." Marcus's face tightened with regret, and he leaned forward slightly, his eyes pleading. "I know I've hurt you, Emma. I know I don't deserve another chance. But please, I need you to understand. I never stopped loving you. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong. And I know now that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." Emma swallowed hard, the tears threatening to spill over. She had never expected him to say those words, not after everything that had happened. He had hurt her so deeply, and yet, hearing him say that he still loved her made something inside her stir. She had spent so long telling herself that she didn't need him, that she was better off without him. But now, sitting here with him, those walls she had built around her heart began to crumble. "You don't understand," Emma said, her voice shaking. "I spent so many years wondering what happened, why you left. And when I finally moved on, when I finally started to accept that you were never coming back, you show up. You come back and ask me to forgive you? I don't know if I can do that." Marcus stood up slowly, his expression filled with sorrow. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now, Emma. I'm asking for a chance to show you that I can be the man you deserve. I can't change the past, but I can be here for you now. I can be what you need." Emma felt the tears welling up in her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away. "You don't get it, Marcus," she whispered. "I've spent so many years alone. I've learned to be okay without you. I've learned to stand on my own, to rely on myself. And now you're asking me to open up again, to trust you again. I don't know if I can do that." Marcus took a step closer to her, his hands trembling as he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I know it's hard," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "I know you've had to carry the weight of everything on your own. But I can't change what I did. I can only ask you to give me a chance to show you that I'm not the same person I was back then. I've changed, Emma. I've learned so much, and I'm here now for you, if you'll let me." Emma looked at him, her heart torn between the love she had once felt for him and the pain of what he had done. Could she really open her heart to him again? Could she trust him after everything that had happened? The room was silent for a long moment as Emma tried to make sense of her feelings. She didn't know what to do, but she knew that she couldn't keep living in the past. She couldn't keep holding on to the anger, the hurt, the bitterness that had filled her for so many years. She needed to let go, to find peace. Finally, she looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you, Marcus," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can move forward together." Marcus's eyes softened and a small, hopeful smile appeared on his lips. "That's all I can ask for, Emma. I promise I won't let you down." As they stood there in the quiet of the evening, Emma felt a shift within herself. It wasn't the end of the road, not by a long shot. But maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something new, something she hadn't expected, but something she was willing to try for the first time in a long while. The days that followed Emma's decision to give Marcus another chance were quiet, yet full of unease. Both of them knew that nothing could be rushed. There was a long road ahead of them, one that would require time, patience, and trust, things that Emma had been without for so long. The idea of opening her heart again to someone who had hurt her, who had walked away without a word, was not an easy thing to do. Yet, as each day passed, she felt a small spark of hope flicker within her. Maybe this was the beginning of healing, not just for her, but for both of them. Marcus, for his part, had been nothing but patient. He didn't press her for more than she was ready to give. He kept his distance when needed, but he also stayed close, showing up every day to help on the farm, to work alongside her in silence. He didn't need to speak. His actions said everything. He was there. And for the first time in years, Emma didn't feel so alone. It had been 2 weeks since they had had their heart-to-heart in the living room. 2 weeks since she had decided to give him the chance to prove himself. And although Emma had taken small steps toward opening up, she still found herself hesitating. Old wounds didn't heal overnight. Every time Marcus smiled at her, every time his hand brushed hers as they worked, she felt that familiar warmth return. But with it came the fear of getting hurt again. The sun had set on the 5th evening of the week when Emma found herself standing by the gate, watching the last light of day dip behind the mountains. It had been a long day of work, and the air was cool, carrying the scent of fresh hay and the earthy aroma of the land. Emma leaned on the fence, her thoughts drifting as she watched the shadows stretch across the fields. She had been thinking about Marcus again, about how much he had changed since his return. He was no longer the young man she had once known, full of hopes and dreams that had seemed so unreachable. Now he was grounded, humbled by time and by the life he had chosen to return to. And in many ways, so was she. "Hey, Emma." A familiar voice called from behind her, breaking her from her thoughts. Emma turned to see Marcus walking toward her, his broad shoulders framed by the orange glow of the setting sun. He was carrying a bundle of hay over his shoulder, his boots kicking up dust with every step. "Evening, Marcus," she replied softly, giving him a small, tentative smile. He stopped a few feet away from her, setting the hay down on the ground. There was something in his eyes that Emma couldn't quite place, something deeper than usual. He wasn't smiling, but his gaze was warm, steady. She could tell that he wanted to say something important, but was unsure if she was ready to hear it. "I've been thinking," Marcus began, his voice low, almost hesitant, "about what you said before, about how you're willing to try, but still not sure if you can forgive me. And I want you to know, I don't expect that from you right now or ever. But if there's one thing I've learned these past few weeks, it's that I want to make things right. Not just for us, but for you." Emma's heart tightened at his words. She had heard him express regret before, but something about the sincerity in his voice made it feel different. It wasn't just an apology, it was a promise. "I don't know what you mean," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, though her gaze never left his. "I'm trying, Marcus. I am. But there are days when I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. I want to believe in us again, but I don't know if I can. I've been hurt so much." Marcus took a deep breath as if gathering the courage to say what had been on his mind for days. He stepped a little closer, closing the space between them. Emma could feel her heart race, but she didn't pull away. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken words. "I've spent all these years thinking about what I lost. What we lost," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I also realized something else. I've spent so much time thinking about me, about what I wanted, what I thought was best for me. But I never once asked what you needed. I never once considered how you might have felt, what you might have gone through." Emma's throat tightened. She hadn't expected him to say this. In all the years they had been apart, she had convinced herself that he didn't care, that he had moved on, that he had forgotten about her. But hearing him speak like this, with such honesty, made something in her stir, something she had buried deep inside, something she had denied for far too long. "I can't change the past," Marcus continued, his voice softer now. "I can't take back the hurt I caused you, but I can be here for you now. I can listen to you, and I can respect whatever you need, whether that's time, space, or just someone to talk to. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I just want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving this time." Emma felt her heart flutter in her chest. His words were exactly what she had needed to hear. For so long, she had carried the burden of anger and pain, never allowing herself to heal completely. And now, here he was, standing in front of her, showing her the one thing she had always longed for, a chance at healing, a chance at something new. She took a step closer to him, her hand trembling slightly as she reached out to touch his. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Marcus didn't hesitate. His hand found hers, his fingers wrapping around hers gently, as if afraid she might pull away. "I don't know what the future holds for us, Marcus," Emma said, her voice trembling, "but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see where this goes." Marcus smiled then, a small but genuine smile that made Emma's heart feel lighter. "That's all I can ask for," he said softly. They stood there for a moment, hand in hand, the evening wind whispering around them. The world seemed to slow, as if time itself was giving them a moment to breathe, to take it all in. The weight of the past, the hurt, the fear, was still there, but it no longer felt as heavy. Maybe, just maybe, they could build something new from the pieces they had left behind. Emma looked up at the sky, the stars beginning to twinkle faintly above. She had no answers, no guarantees, but she did know one thing. She wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time in a long while, that thought didn't scare her. It gave her hope. "We'll take it one step at a time," she said, her voice filled with a quiet determination. "And whatever happens, we'll face it together."